The dangerous, idiotic debt ceiling ritual lurches toward conclusion. The tiresome, pointless and dangerous exercise of flirting with the debt ceiling is the most idiotic ritual our elected leaders in Washington regularly perform. It's like running with the bulls in Pamplona, but without the adrenaline rush, and with graver consequences for a false step. The 2023 production of this melodrama appears to be nearing its finale. On Saturday, President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Republican California, reached an agreement in principle that it would be better, on balance, not to crash the global economy and rob the nation of trillions of dollars in wealth. They'll go out on a limb and say that most Americans would agree. Now, like a washing machine toward the end of its cycle, we have shifted into the spin phase. House Republicans who support the deal McCarthy negotiated on their behalf crowed Sunday that they made out like bandits. The deal is a remarkable conservative achievement that provides no wins for Democrats, Representative Dusty Johnson, Republican South Dakota, said on CNN. Overwhelmingly, Republicans in this conference are going to support the deal. How could they not? It is a fantastic deal. The initial reaction from Democrats, by contrast, ranged from caution to skepticism. Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat New York, said that there will be Democratic support. But I'm not going to predict what those numbers may ultimately look like. Representative Pramila Jayapal, Democrat Washington, chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, said she did not yet know if she will vote for the deal, blasting its strengthened work requirements for food stamp recipients as absolutely terrible policy. Representative Jim Himes, Democrat Connecticut, said he is tempted to say that he is a no. In keeping with the rules of post-negotiation spin, all of this probably means the opposite of what it purports to say. Based on what we've learned about the Biden-McCarthy agreement so far, it looks to me as though Republicans got relatively less of what they wanted, while Democrats got relatively more. The biggest win of all, for the nation, is that apparently we get a nearly 2-year respite from this ridiculous game. Congress or the President should use that time to eliminate the debt ceiling once and for all. At issue, remember, is whether the U.S. government will honor the debts and spending commitments Congress has already made. It would be an unmitigated catastrophe if the world's greatest economic power, issuer of the world's most widely used and trusted reserve currency, were to turn deadbeat and fail to pay its bills. Debating whether Biden or McCarthy deserved most of the blame would be irrelevant. Interest rates would soar, and retirement accounts plummet, for Republicans and Democrats alike. I'm all for a debate on how to address the nation's $31.46 trillion debt, a rational debate, considering both spending and revenue. This should take place, however, during the budget and appropriations processes, which I dimly remember from the days when Congress was functional. It makes absolutely no sense to try to implement sensible, effective, long-term policies under a sky-is-falling deadline. So far, no Congress or president has been reckless enough to let the sky actually fall. Even Donald Trump, when he was president, scoffed at the idea of using the debt ceiling as a bargaining chip. In his town hall on CNN, Trump urged Republicans to pull the pin on the default grenade. "You might as well do it now, because you'll do it later," he said, but I took his words as nothing but bluster for the MAGA base. It should be noted that the debt grew by a whopping $7.8 trillion during Trump's 4 years in office. Assuming the deal that Biden and McCarthy worked out makes it through both chambers of Congress and is signed into law, there will be some painful but survivable time-limited cuts to discretionary spending, the kind that actually helps people. Work requirements for food stamp recipients, which now end at age 50, will be extended to age 54. The permitting process for energy projects, dirty and clean alike, will be shortened. Defense spending will rise, as it always does. And we will not have to revisit the debt ceiling question for nearly 2 years. I have an idea. How about never? Does never work for you? Democrats should have tried to do away with the debt ceiling when they controlled the White House and both chambers of Congress. After this agreement is signed and sealed, Biden should look for a way to have the Supreme Court decide whether the 14th Amendment makes the debt ceiling unconstitutional, as some legal scholars believe. reasonable people need to stop the madness. One of these times, unreasonable people will miscalculate, and deal the nation a crippling self-inflicted blow. The dangerous, idiotic debt ceiling ritual lurches toward conclusion. The tiresome, pointless and dangerous exercise of flirting with the debt ceiling is the most idiotic ritual our elected leaders in Washington regularly perform. It's like running with the bulls in Pamplona, but without the adrenaline rush, and with graver consequences for a false step. The 2023 production of this melodrama appears to be nearing its finale. Finally, can we ask who really colluded with Russia? If the crime is promoting distrust in institutions, the evidence is strongest against the FBI and media. Millions of Americans despise Donald Trump and probably think it was justified or at least good clean fun when the Hillary Clinton campaign manufactured fake evidence of collusion with Russia, and the FBI and other branches of government used this information to trammel his presidency. At least this view, whatever its faults, isn't stupid. But stop the presses, now we have a real case of collusion. Since the Ukraine war, Russia's PR operation has published lists of individuals under meaningless Kremlin sanctions. These lists are scanned by pundits, wonks and politicians to see if they can brag about being unpopular with Vladimir Putin. Last week Russia came out with 500 more names, including some criticized by Donald Trump, like Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who certified his 2020 defeat in the state, and the Capitol policeman who shot Ashley Babbitt during the January 6 riot. Press commentary universally portrayed this as a Kremlin attempt to help Mr. Trump, but how does it help Mr. Trump, and how could Russia fail to know exactly how its action would be played in the US press? How is the press, therefore, not playing along with Russia? The word we've needed all along for the press and its fellow collusion hoax promoters is disingenuous, defined by Oxford as not candid or sincere, typically by pretending that one knows less about something than one really does. Disingenuous was the press handling of a collusion story it always knew was partisan, implausible and unsupported. Disingenuous was the New York Times harumphing last week that the latest John Durham report fails to live up to years of political hype. Of course, it shouldn't have. Hype is short for hyperbole, exaggeration. Do we want prosecutors to cleave to hype or to facts? Read on. And the hype Mr. Durham failed to live up to was Donald Trump's. The paper relies on Mr. Trump to tell it how to frame the news. I could go on. Disingenuous was the Vox writer who trumpeted that Mr. Durham failed to prove a criminal conspiracy by Democrats. Mr. Durham not only failed to prove it, he failed to charge it, and never suggested by word or deed this was his intention. In his 3 measured criminal cases, he never cited conspiracy charges. He also did not leak. He did not rush his work to influence elections. This studied disingenuousness has been the press' consistent